Hi guys, and welcome back from Carly at the Herbothecary. If you've seen any of our previous videos, you know that here in our house, well, and outside, not only do we love growing and foraging for our food, we also enjoy turning it into the most amazing meals, if I do say so myself. Not only is nutrition really important to us, we're also a big fan of flavor bombs and what most would consider unusual meals. Now, at the weekend, I can have anywhere between 2 and 5, sometimes more, extra children in our house for sleepover nights, and feeding a picky eaters is difficult for us as our tastes aren't exactly what they're used to. Let's just say you won't find fish fingers and chips in our house. You might, however, find, a breaded fish that we've made ourselves using unusual ingredients. Or maybe that fish was caught by one of our friends and we cleaned it, gutted it, filleted it ourselves. Not always to other people's tastes. So tonight I am making one of the only meals that I know every single person in the house will eat. Not only is it packed full of goodies, really, really healthy things, it also fits all of the flavor parameters. It's salt, it's sweety, it's sour, it's umami. It also comes together. So tonight I am feeding 3 12-year-olds, 3 9-year-olds, a 7-year-old, and 2 grown-ups for under £10 with the help of some of my trusty store cupboard ingredients. And as always, some of the wonderful ingredients that we either foraged or grew here in the Herbothecary garden, and some of them in the Herbothecary conservatory. So tonight we will be making miso chicken ramen noodles. So I've got some of the garlic from last season, a bell pepper we grew in the conservatory, the ginger also in the conservatory, the spring onions and the shallots we grew in the garden. The mushrooms we did have to buy though. We only grew white mushrooms and oyster mushrooms this year, and I also have some of the wood ear mushrooms that we foraged a couple of years ago actually and dried, and this small handful is what's left. I did buy the miso a while back, the one that we made ourselves. We've gone through. Hubby picked up some of these noodles reduced, though I normally make it with the packet noodles that you normally add the little sachet to, but the girls do prefer those, so I'll save these for Daddy and I guess it's prep time. So I'm going to finely chop the shallots. Now, I normally end up doing things a bit backwards, and that's probably not the best way to use a knife. So don't do that. Just don't do that. Practice safe knife skills, unlike me. Oh, and of course, I forgot, as usual, there's my little lady coming to offer to help. I need to rehydrate all those wood ear mushrooms. Now, it's a good thing we only have, well, it's not a good thing we only have a small handful left, but I only add a few of these and break them down. So I'm just going to rehydrate them in some hot water. Pop them aside to rehydrate for a while I get on with finely chopping all my other fresh ingredients. I've got my mushrooms, my garlic, my ginger, my onions, and I still need to chop those spring onions. So let's get on with the cooking now. I've got my nice heavy pan heating up, and I'm going to start with a little bit of oil. I will be cooking mostly with the butter, but I'm going to cook off those red peppers first once I julienne them or cut them into thin strips for 2 reasons. A, I want them to have a nice char to them, and be. I'm the only one in the house that doesn't actually like bell peppers. I can't even stand the smell of them. So I will add these on top of everyone else's meal later as a little charred garnish on top when I'm serving up the meals. So that's my peppers cut into juliennes or thin slivers, whatever you want to call them. And as I said, I'm going to add these to my very hot pan as I do want them to char down. And if I was to add them with the meal, say I wasn't eating, all the butter would soften them and they wouldn't actually char properly. So those peppers have got a really, really good char to them now. So I am just going to pop them in a bowl and pop them aside for later. I'm not so worried about them staying warm, as once they get mixed in with the nice hot ramen noodles, they'll heat up in the process. So we've got that tiny little bit of oil that's left over and in there with our onions. And we're going to pop our onions in and we're going to give them a good mix until they're translucent. We don't want anything to crisp up too much, as we're not looking for a crispy onion. We do want these to soften up so they kind of break down, as we don't want them to be a predominant crunch or texture to the meal. So once that's done, in with our garlic. We'll give that a good mix in for half a minute. We want that to impart all of its flavors before we add in our ginger. Again, we're going to keep mixing that. Now, this is on a medium heat as we don't really want anything to crisp up. So now it's time to add the butter. Now, the miso mixed with the butter has such an amazing flavor. It seems like the fats in the butter soak up all the umami. They add a great flavor. When paired together, it's just something amazing about it. So I've turned this up slightly to have a sizzle. I'm going to add my green onions or my spring onions. Now, I add the spring onions towards the end because I don't want them to soften down like the shallots. I do want them to have a crunch to them. And you'll see in a minute when I add the leafy greens why. Now my mushrooms are cut quite fine, so they really, really don't take that long to soften up. So I'm just going to turn down my heat, let that simmer for a little while, soften up, all the flavors mix together while I prep my chicken. Now, as I said, this meal was for under £10, and we're not really big meat eaters in our house. So I've got 3 chicken breasts in here that it was £4.10 for all 3, and I'm only going to use 1.5, so £2 and 5p on my chicken, I suppose. Now, I don't know about you guys, but in our house, we don't eat any of those little white stringy bits, any of the fat bits or anything like that. So I just give my chicken a good clean up. And then, as you can see, just cut it into smallest cubes. Now, those bits that I've cut off, they won't go to waste. My neighbor has a kitty cat, and I'll probably pop those in the oven and cook them up and pop them next door. It's actually one of her kids, or actually one of the kids that are staying here is her daughter. So I shall pop that over tomorrow when I go to drop her little lady off. Now, chicken's nicely diced. I will actually be breaking it up more, but you can see there's still 1.5 bits of chicken left, and we'll use those in either a chicken mushroom pie or chicken parm, something like that for tomorrow's dinner. My wood ear mushrooms are nice and rehydrated. Said I use those in little bits as they are quite rubbery and chewy. So I'm going to break them up into tiny pieces and add them into my mix now. For some reason, my camera got a little wobbly here, which is unusual because it is on a stand, so I have no idea why. So back to the cooking. Now, everything is nice and soft and all the flavors are in that butter. So it's now time to add some of our other flavors that we use. We've got a dark soy sauce and a sweet chili sauce, of course our miso, and we've also got some Chinese 5 spices that we're going to add. These, well, the Chinese 5 spices optional. However, I do find that it's not a stir fry unless it has some soy sauce and some sweet chili sauce for the tang. It is now time to get our noodles ready. So I've just got a little bit of water, the least amount as possible, and that packet of chicken noodles, I think these ones are by, and we're just gonna pop them on the heat to do their thing and soften up while we get the rest of the meal ready. So in with our chicken. I have popped all the other ingredients to the edges of the pan as I want as much of the chicken surface as possible to be in contact with the hot pan so that it cooks as quickly as possible. I am going to add my other flavorings now so the chicken soaks it all up. So I've got a large teaspoon of miso paste going in there, and we'll give that a good mix in. Make sure the chicken is all coated in that umami goodness. Then a dash of our Chinese 5 spices, just a little sprinkle. As I said, if you're not a big fan of that flavor mix, then don't add that one. I do have one person who comes around for dinner who absolutely cannot stand Chinese 5 spices. So when I make this for her, I do leave it out. And I'm also breaking down my chicken as much as possible into smaller pieces because I don't want big chunks. I just want little bits of chicken spread throughout the meal. As I said, I've only used 1.5, and we're not big meat eaters. So, unless it's steak. If it's steak, then we're big meat eaters. My final addition, well, not final addition, is the greens and the crunch. I add them at this point as these I do want to keep their crunch. Now, if you've seen my previous videos, we normally harvest from the garden. We grow the bean shoots ourselves. But hubby picked up this mixed stir fry bag, and again it was reduced, so we shall use that. It was down to like 29p. It's got carrots, onions, bean shoots, Chinese cabbage, a little bit of winter cabbage in there. Nice crunch, and I do want this to be the predominant crunch within the meal. So I'm going to give that a mix in for a couple of minutes at most. Said I don't want it to soften too much, but once it's all mixed in and I am certain that that chicken is all the way cooked, I'm just going to pop a lid on that, and I'm going to pop it off the heat for a few minutes and finish off those noodles. All that steam inside will mix everything together, keep it moist but still crunchy. So we've got our noodles, and I am going to add the chicken packet to this. Don't always do it, but it will add some extra chickeny flavor. And as you can see, most of the actual liquid has steamed off. Turns out at the end of the meal, my daughter would have preferred if I'd left some more of the liquid, as the sauce is one of her favorite parts. So once that's all in, and it's literally been sat for a few minutes. I think in South Africa they actually call them Maggie 2-minute noodles because that's how long they take to make. So everything's all nice and mixed in, and it's time to add our noodles, juice and all. Give that a good stir in. Now at this point I find my spoon is insufficient, so we're going to swap over to our chopsticks, which allow us to mix everything together, incorporate it properly. But we're very almost done with our amazing stir fry. It's just time to add our other flavors. So I've got some oyster sauce. So I'm adding about a tablespoon of the oyster sauce, about a tablespoon and a half of the dark soy sauce, about a tablespoon of sweet chili sauce. Obviously add these in, check the flavor. Don't forget to taste as you go along to work out whether or not the flavor is right for you, or whether or not you need to add any more of anything else. So as always, have a little taste of your food. Make sure you get a bit of everything. Give that a good mix in so it's all incorporated. I can't help but taste it. Make sure that chicken's well cooked. Now a little bit more soy sauce I thought this needed. So probably about 2 tablespoons. And then to balance out the salty umami flavor, just a small teaspoon of a good honey. And I am extremely happy with the flavor of this. So I am going to add some little bits of seaweed that I've ripped up. Again, this one is optional. If you don't have seaweed, don't add the seaweed. But I buy the little squares in a pack of 200, as not only do I love sushi, I also just eat these things like they're crisps. And of course, one thing that I always forget, my final ingredient is a boiled egg. Soft medium boiled egg that goes on top. So I've just brought my water to a boil with a teaspoon of salt in it. Jamie Oliver says that putting salt in the water stops it from cracking. I don't know, you know. But my eggs rarely crack, so I'm gonna do it anyway. So now it's time to serve. My little man came to help me setting up the places. Hello, young man. That's him in the background. And 2 of our guests don't eat eggs, so there was no eggs on their plate, obviously. Some crispy seaweed just ripped up on top. And this is the finished result. And it went down a treat. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let us know if you give it a go. It is a winner all round.